Hello there everyone, nubkeks here, welcome back to Nub Raids. We are on the Raid Shadow Legends test server. Shout out to Plarium once again for letting us on here, because today I have 4 brand new champions to show you, which is really exciting. I do have, I'm slightly blinded as well. You know, I'm in the new office, just moved house, so we're still in the process of getting all that sorted. Thank you guys for bearing with me. I've got a lamp in front of me, and actually in front of my monitor today to light me up, because look at this. If I turn it off, we are sitting here in the darkness. Well, I mean, it's perfectly bright for me, but for the camera, not so. So yeah, there's still a lot of stuff ongoing. So yeah, thanks for your patience as I get everything sorted. We get back to the regular amount of videos per day and all the rest. Thanks for sticking with us. Let's dive in though. Hi Elves, we have our first new champion, and that champion, believe it or not, is a rare champion. There she is, Prosecutor. So first of all, Prosecutor, she's a rare Spirit Affinity champion. I have to say, visually, this champion actually looks super cool. I think it kind of stands out, seeing as the High Elves are so old. A lot of their champions don't look amazing. Like if we look at Roanus, for example, I mean, it's kind of a cool design, but he's certainly dated texture-wise. I would actually say that Prosecutor, the rare champion, on the whole looks better than him. Like maybe the weapons are a bit small and silly, but pretty damn cool looking champion. Well, are they any good? They're a rare champion, so you don't expect them to be good. Well, let's take a look. A1, Sap Initiative. Attacks one enemy 2 times. Each hit has a 20 bucks to 30% chance of decreasing the target's turn meter by 10%. Okay, this is pretty awful. Not really much good. It's a small effect with a bad chance to land. Moving on. Halt Proceedings, the A2, 4-turn cooldown bucks to a 3-turn cooldown, attacks all enemies, has a 50 bucks to 75% chance of placing a 30% decreased speed debuff for 2 turns. I actually think that's really good. Like, considering this is a rare champion, they're usually placing the small version of buffs and debuffs. To place the big version of decreased speed, this is actually a fairly rare ability, even amongst epics. So I do think for building up some teams initially, for newer players, this could actually be very helpful. Then our A3, Prosecute, matches the name. 5-turn bucks to a 4-turn cooldown, attacks one enemy 3 times, places a 50% increased accuracy buff on this champion for 2 turns before attacking, and each hit has a 30% chance that bucks to a, a 55% chance of placing a 100% heal reduction debuff for 2 turns. So we put all this stuff together. I think this champion, considering the affinity, is definitely meant to be helpful for newer players in like the first maybe 3 months or so playing the game to start taking down Fire Knight, right? Fire Knight stage 20 in particular, the affinity is good for that. She comes in with the turn meter, albeit a terrible one, A1, decreased speed, and then triple hitter for knocking down Fire Knight shield, and the heal reduction to stop him healing up. I think that's her intended purpose. I think she looks okay for it, like she's going to be easy to build with accuracy because she can increase accuracy first. I do think the AoE decrease speed is cool. The weakness, of course, look at those stats, like terrible base stat. She's so squishy. She's just going to fall over dead at a stiff breeze. She's an attack-based champion with actually pretty good attack for a rare champion, similar to the starter champs, 57% crit damage. So we'll see. I mean, she might hit fairly hard. It might be a champion that's worth considering if you're new to the game. If you've been playing for a while, she's obviously just going to be something you get for the fusion, and then she's food, right? Next up then, we have over in the Shadowkin, the Epic. And I presume that this Epic, we're going to need to build 4 of these because there's only 1 Epic. It should be collecting, I presume, 16 copies of that rare to fuse into 4 copies of Tomoe? I don't know how to say this properly. I'm sure there's like an authentic, proper way to say it, and I don't know. But presumably you'd be able to fuse 4 of her to make the fusion. For people that are earlier in the game, let's take a look and see if she's any good for you. If you're so early in the game you can't complete the fusion, is it worth going for 1 copy of this Epic? First of all, visually, I think she looks really freaking cool. Like the quality, the detail on that chainmail is actually extremely high. I think she looks super badass. I love this fairly realistic style armor, albeit like the exposed midriff seems like a bad idea, doesn't it? That's not a good idea if you're going into a fight. That's the one place you'd make sure to have armor on. But hey, it is what it is. Her set actually reminds me a lot of, if any of you played Final Fantasy XIV online, right? It looks a lot like one of the ninja sets. I can't remember which one, but the ninja class definitely has a set that looks extremely like this. So she definitely has that vibe. Very cool. Let's take a look at her kit. So she's obviously Epic Support Champion. A1, attacks one enemy, stab and grab. 30 bucks to a 50% chance of stealing 1 random buff from the target. It's okay. it's okay, you know, fairly standard. Bamboozle, amazing name for her A2. 4-turn books to a 3-turn cooldown. Attacks all enemies, has a 75 books to 100% chance of placing a decreased attack debuff for 2 turns. 3-turn cooldown, AoE decrease attack. You know, this is fairly standard epic stuff. You compare that to Stag Knight or something, and it's clearly very weak. So not the draw of her kit at all, but it's a fairly standard epic level move, you know? Thick as Thieves, then, this is where things get funky. This is where it gets funky. 6-turn cooldown, books to a 4-turn cooldown. Places a counterattack buff on a target ally for 2 turns, but places the counterattack buff for 3 turns instead if the ally is from the Shadowkin faction. Then fills the turn meters of all allies by 15% and places 30% increased crit damage buff on all allies for 2 turns, and also places a 30% increased crit rate buff for 2 turns on allies from the Shadowkin faction. Definitely intriguing, and we're going to see more Shadowkin stuff in a second here, but very intriguing. Counterattack on a single ally doesn't stand out as being super useful anywhere in particular, like maybe for Hydra, for setting up someone as a mischief tank. It's obviously very useful to have them at counterattack. It's a rare buff, so that's a bonus, number one, and then when they keep getting attacked by mischief, they get to counterattack, which is kind of a win, right? Increased crit damage is pretty terrible. The turn meter fill is nice. But yeah, I definitely think for faction wars, this is where it stands out as good, where the counterattack is probably quite helpful. An increased crit rate is actually going to be quite good for your Shadowkin faction. Then check this out. Brethren, her passive, increase all turn meter fill effects and heals by 20% when used on allies from the Shadowkin faction. Pretty cool. Obviously, you can't stack this. It only works once per team. But yeah, just making your turn meter fill and your heals more effective for your Shadowkin. And then her aura is ally speed 24% in faction crypts. So I think this champion is fairly straightforward. Her stats are solid across the board. I'd say very average just in general. Like, she's decently tanky. Doesn't look like she's going to do any real damage at all, but fairly standard supportive type stats. This champion to me looks through and through to be a faction crypt champion. Really no surprise. With this aura, this passive, and the bonus effects here on this A3, and then her A1, A2 being very underwhelming. This is a champion I think you use for Shadowkin faction crypts and probably never use anywhere else. So basically, I think if you are early in the game and you haven't beaten Shadowkin faction crypt, although do note it's one of the easier ones. I do think Shadowkin faction crypt is very easy. But if you're still in the process of beating it, I do think it's worth it to pick her up. Most likely, we'll do a test of her. But I think she's really going to help your Shadowkin team get through and take stuff down. She's just going to up your damage a lot with this stuff. I think she's going to be good and give you lots more speed. She's going to up the aggressiveness of the faction, and it's already a fairly aggressive faction. So I think she's going to be good for that. I do. Good combo with Genbo as well, giving crit rate, because he can buff himself with crit rate on one wave, then she can do it the next wave, you know, stuff like that. Outside of faction crypt, though, I don't see where you would ever use her. Seems really terrible. So for later game players, if you've beaten the faction crypt, no use. And yeah, certainly I think you don't need to really stress about getting an extra copy of her during the fusion, if that's even an option. Yeah, for me, this is a champion that, personally, for my account, I definitely don't need, though she's very visually cool. But I don't think she'd be any much good for me. Now we go to the 2 legendaries. First of all, we have the fusion legendary Moranix, who again looks super badass. Yeah, the only issue I have with her is, like, look at these daggers. What is this dagger placement? As soon as she bends her knee, or bends her legs, like at the hip, she is either gonna jam the scabbard into her leg, or jam that hilt, the pommel, into her waist. Like, she's gonna pommel herself right in the tit, you know? That's gonna be sore. That seems very impractical. If those daggers were actually down on her leg, like strapped to her leg, where she can bend that leg and it doesn't matter, actually kind of useful, you know, it's a bit of protection for her leg because she decided to leave the inside of her legs unarmored. That would be kind of nice protection. If they were on her hip, you know, no problem. You can bend your leg and it's going to be just fine. This seems to be, to me, the absolute worst place you could put anything. It seems really bad. But there you go. Apart from that, we've already seen her skills. I'll pop them up on the screen. You can pause and read. I've done a whole video on this already. We've seen the skills. She certainly looks like an interesting champion for me. I will let you guys know with the playtest. That should be live. The playtest should be live pretty much at the exact same time as this video. So go watch that after this one, right? The playtest for Moranix. Or you watched that first and came to this one. I don't know. You're your own boss. Don't let me tell you what to do. We haven't seen her stats before, though. How do her stats look? She's got good attack. It's not the highest in the world, but it's solid. So she's going to do good damage, but probably not crazy damage, which is what we expected. Got the good crit damage. Actually, it's fairly solid base speed. So yeah, I think she looks like a good solid champion. I'm certainly excited to get her because I do love me some Hex. Yeah, we shall see. I'll check back for the playtest where I'll actually get to play her and find out more. And then finally, we go to the Knights Revenant for a new Void Legendary champion, Fortis. And this guy is pretty funky. Number one, he looks so goddamn cool. I think this might be the coolest looking champion in the game now. Hot diggity dog. This guy looks like a Dark Souls boss through and through. Look at that sword. That sword is so badass. He's got this Kraken style mask. He's got, I don't know, weird things hanging from his belt. This guy looks freaking amazing. He looks so good. I absolutely love it. I love it. Let's check him out. He's defense-based. Legendary. Okay. And again, with his stats, good HP, good defense. Not crazy high, but good. Reasonably slow. Got big crit damage, though, which means he's probably going to smack hard. There's not many defense-based nukers that have crit damage like this. It's quite unusual. I do think that Staltis, in terms of legendaries, is the other big contender, but Staltis, of course, has affinity issues. Solus, I believe that's only, in fact, we can check, same faction. Yeah, Solus only has the 50% crit damage. So this guy certainly has good stats for defensive nuker, that's for sure. And he's got a really weird kit. Let's check it out. A1, Taste of Oblivion, attacks one enemy, 50% chance when booked of placing a fear debuff for one turn. This attack will always be critical if the target is under fear or true fear. His A2, 4-turn cooldown books to 3, Horrors Beyond, attacks all enemies, has an 80 books to 100% chance of placing true fear for one turn. This debuff cannot be resisted by targets under fear debuffs. His A3, it's not an A3 really in a sense, it's a secret skill. Secret skill. This skill has a 40% chance to be unlocked for one turn whenever a fear or true fear debuff is placed on an enemy. It's an AoE attack that ignores 30% of each target's defense against targets under fear or true fear debuffs and will always crit against targets under fear or true fear debuffs. And on top of that, the damage of this skill increases by 10% every time a fear or true fear debuff is placed on an enemy. This guy is so unique. I did do a cheeky little test. Cheeky little sneaky test before the start of this video. I'm fairly sure from that test I sent him through some Doom Tower waves that this just stacks up, just keeps stacking. So on the first wave of Doom Tower, it's not going to hit crazy hard, but by the time you get to the third wave, if you got lots of fears in your team, this thing really starts to smack. So it's very interesting. Then he's got a passive. Now this passive is pretty nutty, the passive effect of it. Increases the chance of enemy skills failing by 15% when those enemies are under fear or true fear debuffs. The default is 50% with these, right? So knocking that up to 65% is actually a pretty substantial increase. That's quite a big deal, and makes these debuffs quite scary. Like, that's a real pain in the butt. It also has a 4-turn cooldown active effect that prevents this champion's death and keeps him alive on 1 HP when hit by a fatal hit. Then removes all buffs and debuffs from this champion, and then after that fully heals him and fully depletes his turn meter. So it will cleanse off like heal reduction or anything like that first, then fully heal him. You do lose all your buffs though, which is certainly dangerous. It will also 80% chance of placing fear on all enemies for one turn, and then also puts sleep on this champion, which cannot be resisted or blocked. So that's definitely kind of funky. It's a weird passive, right? A really weird active effect to the passive. Prevents his death, but fully depletes his turn meter and puts him to sleep, and then fears enemies. It's definitely funky. I guess the idea would be, if you have enough accuracy that you fear them, they can't hit you that hard. Maybe they wake him up by accident, and then he gets to have a go. But I don't know, it's funky. Then he has an aura, ally crit rate in arena battles by 25%. So this guy, he's very different. I don't know if he's amazing or terrible. It's certainly intriguing. Like, in terms of accuracy, right? You need accuracy for the fear in his A1. But if there's fears out there, this true fear is irresistible. So you could still land true fear with this move without any accuracy. But then you also need accuracy for this fear. And then for crit rate, right, this move will always crit targets under fear and true fear. This move always crits targets under fear and true fear, but his A2 doesn't have that effect. So his A2 needs crit rate to actually benefit from it. So he's really funky. Like, how do you build him? What do you have going on? And I also think like he doesn't have that many ways to apply fear himself. He has the AoE True Fear, but he clearly wants to be comboed with other champions that are going to put out fears and True Fears. So definitely fun to see what sort of teams we can build with him. I'm going to talk to YST. I'm going to see if maybe we can throw together a collaboration on this champion, because I think this is a champion that needs a lot of creativity to really think about how the heck do you actually use him and make him good. Because I think if you don't build a team around him specifically, he's going to be pretty bad. I think he's probably going to be best in Doom Tower waves, where the fear is really useful for controlling them. And then he can start to just stack up damage like crazy. I think that could be really good. I also think he might be really good in Arena with champions that can throw out fear in Arena. Again, just this move stacking up and up and up could be pretty potent. He's obviously going to be pretty tanky. He's a strange one. I'm certainly excited to test him out though. But there you go, guys. They are the 4 new champions coming in this patch. It should be coming tomorrow. This video should be out on Monday. The patch should be live on Tuesday. And of course, when the patch goes live as well, I will have a full guide as soon as I can on the Fusion calendar, what events to do, where to target to get your champions and to actually fuse this up. I'll guide you through all of that as I always do. Yeah, thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for bearing with the production value and video quantity issues as we move. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you all next time. Don't forget to watch the moranix video, which, like I said, should be out at the same time. And I'll see y'all soon. Bye-bye.